Our story follows Linton, the protagonist who reincarnates as a goblin, the lowest ranked magical creature. At first, he is forced to hide, but with the god's blessing and the system's mysterious power, he slowly unlocks the true nature of a goblin. The system grants him a strange ability. The more children he fathers, the stronger he becomes. The story opens inside a dimly lit cave, crawling with monsters that most would fear. The goblins are celebrating the death of their chief. With the leader gone, everyone rushes to steal his weapon and possessions. His corpse lies on the ground while small goblins scramble around it, too brainless to even decide who gets the wooden club. Two of them choose the only method they know to decide a new chief, a brutal fight to the death. Goblins scratch, bite, and use every filthy trick to win. The rest of the goblin lair gathers around them, cheering for violence. During the chaos, the goblins remember the untouched prey hidden deeper inside the cave. Now that there is no official owner, they want to claim her, but guarding the prey is someone even they fear, a goblin who is nothing like the others. Wrapped in scraps like a human and hated by the entire tribe, he is known only as the outcast, the disgusting guardian of the prey. Several goblins decide to follow him, waiting for the perfect moment to steal the girl. The smarter ones wait even longer, thinking they can jump in once the stronger goblins fail. They whisper behind the outcast back, mocking him, unaware that he hears everything. Suddenly, the outcast hears a woman's desperate screams. He rushes toward the chief's chamber with everything he has. Inside, the girl is struggling for her life while a group of goblins forcefully pins her down. She refuses to submit to them. She refuses to give birth to goblin children. When the outcast enters, both she and the goblins freeze. The girl cries harder, terrified, and the goblins tighten their grip on her. The outcast tries to make them release her, but they ignore him. The entire floor is covered with bones of past victims. A massive goblin steps forward, declaring that since the chief is dead, the prey belongs to him. He warns the outcast that if he disagrees, he'll be torn apart. 3 thugs charge at Linton. They're clumsy, but their numbers give them an advantage. Linton dodges, struggling to believe that even low-level goblins are giving him trouble. They scratch at his skin and tear his cloak, but he refuses to die. His journey has only begun. With one clean strike, he spills the first attacker's blood. The other 2 freeze, realizing they may be next. Linton pulls out his crude dagger, knocks one down, and threatens the rest. Instantly, their courage vanishes. Goblins only act tough when they have the upper hand. The moment real danger appears, they collapse. In fear, they scatter and flee. Breathing heavily, Linton finally calms himself. The girl steps closer, asking if he's okay, and quietly thanks him. Unlike the others, Linton has never touched her. He has risked his life multiple times just to keep her safe. Before reincarnating, Linton was human. He woke up for the first time in this miserable cave, confused and injured, never expecting that getting hit by a truck would land him in another world with a half-active system. The system shows his stats but offers no real functions yet. During the last few days, he has learned much from the girl stories of this mystical realm filled with powerful races and terrifying monsters, majestic dragons, ancient demons, and mighty humans who rule through strength. Goblin, however, are viewed as the weakest and filthiest creatures in existence, and Linton's stats reflect that too. Even among cave goblins, he is at the bottom. His name is Linton, a level 5 goblin with a god-given blessing, no class, terrible stats, and a single racial skill, Gene Devourer. His only weapon is a rough stone knife. His total combat power is barely 30 points. He also learns the cruel truth of goblin growth. The only way for goblins to get stronger is through constant mating and reproduction. But since female goblins cannot exist, they reproduce only with other female creatures. One of the reasons goblin lives revolve around violence and assault. As a modern human, Linton refuses to live that way. Seeing him sitting alone in frustration, the girl tells him not to worry. She has spent enough time with him to understand his feelings. She promises that once the night order arrives, she will tell them that Linton saved her life. She's certain that knights, who value fairness, will grant him a peaceful life in the human village. For the first time, Linton thinks this idea might actually work. But before any rescue can happen, trouble approaches. Several goblins have already gone deeper into the cave. The girl hides behind a cluster of rocks while Linton draws his stone knife, ready to defend them both. A desperate human suddenly runs past them, and Linton swiftly slashes the throat of a gore goblin chasing behind. That's when they realize humans have entered the lair, probably to rescue the girl. She gets up immediately and runs toward the exit, expecting the Holy Order's rescue team. Linton follows her. When they reach the entrance, they witness a knight in heavy armor tearing through goblins with a single sword slash. Linton feels a mix of fear and relief at such overwhelming power. This knight is Loder, a level 25 human swordsman with hundreds of stat points. His skills include Sword Kai Slash, Sword Dance, and the holy skill Return to Heaven. His combat power reaches 400 points, an impossible gap compared to Linton's meager 30. The girl runs to him joyfully, calling out to her commander. Meanwhile, Linton notices bodies scattered everywhere and something even more terrifying. Loder raises his judgment sword, aiming to kill the girl he spent days protecting. Acting on instinct, Linton tackles her out of the blade's path. They fall to the ground, bruised but alive. Why is this knight attacking her? Loder sees the two survivors and tells the girl to stay silent. He already knows who she is. He simply believes that since she was captured by goblins, she must have been defiled and possibly carries a goblin child. In his eyes, such filth doesn't deserve mercy. The girl pleads with him, insisting she is unharmed, pointing at Linton as the one who protected her. Loder mocks the idea, calling it impossible for a goblin to protect a human. He declares she can die with the rest of the monsters. Linton can't believe what he's hearing. Is this the morality of humans in this world? He grabs the girl and runs towards another exit. He uses a wooden club to block the knight's sword, hoping to buy even a second. Just as Loder's blade is about to cut him in half, a blinding golden light fills the cave. A holy voice commands the knight to stop. Linton is surrounded by a glowing golden sphere. A woman draped in a holy veil, surrounded by armored soldiers, appears controlling the golden magic. The girl rushes to her, calling her the Holy Maiden. The maiden lifts her gently and hands her over to Commander Loder. Then she turns toward the goblin trapped inside the golden light, and the real judgment begins. Encased in the golden sphere, Linton heard the Holy Maiden's soft voice asking if he could understand her. From what he knew, this woman was the Holy Maiden of Freya, the very person Kalia had spoken about. If he wanted any chance of escaping this cave, she was his only hope. Linton stood up and confirmed her identity. He explained that he was not a monster of this world, he was originally human, only turned into a goblin due to a strange accident. He told her that if the Holy Order took him with them, he could explain everything in detail. Even Commander Loder had to admit that this small goblin seemed far more intelligent than the ones he had just slaughtered. Intelligent goblins were rare. Afra agreed, noting that goblins were usually mindless creatures that couldn't speak or think clearly. Considering that, this one might even be a gift from the Holy Mother. To be sure, Afra turned to Kalia and asked if the goblin was truly harmless. Kalia defended him with all her strength. Not only had Linton never harmed her, he had repeatedly saved her from the other goblins, and even arranged food for her. Afra smiled gently and decided that such a special goblin could be taken back to town, but only after proper studies. She asked Linton if he agreed to this arrangement. He had no other choice. The Holy Maiden was known for her kindness and empathy. She was the only one willing to listen. Staying in the cave meant certain death. At least in a human town, he could try proving his innocence. Afra raised her hand and with a small gesture dissolved the golden sphere trapping him. She then ordered everyone to leave the cave. Linton stepped beside her and thanked her for her kindness, promising that he would repay her properly one day. But then the Holy Maiden's expression twisted into a smug, sinister smile. A wet, slicing sound echoed through the chamber. Human blood splattered across the stone floor. Loder had stabbed Kalia in the stomach. When Linton turned around, he saw the girl, the same girl who had survived all this time hoping for rescue, collapsing at the hands of her own people. Loder stabbed her again, convinced she was carrying a goblin child. Linton stood frozen, speechless, horrified. Afra's angelic voice then shifted into something cold and demonic. She demanded that Linton remember to properly repay her once they reached town. He had never heard anything so evil in his life. A week later, in the human town under the clear blue sky, the plaza bell rang loudly, gathering the townspeople. A stage had been set up where Commander Loder delivered a fiery speech, calling the villagers children of God. He claimed that the recent goblin raid had taken 30 innocent lives, a crime that challenged the authority of the Holy Order. The villagers trembled with anger, demanding blood for blood. Humans and goblins had always been enemies. Loder continued, proudly announcing that the Order had wiped out the filthy goblins and avenged the fallen villagers. Afra stepped forward, urging the people to pray more devotedly and dedicate themselves fully to the temple. Her angelic presence filled the crowd with hope and blind loyalty. They cheered for the knights and praised the temple. Inside the Holy Maiden's quarters, the atmosphere inside was the exact opposite of her holy image: dark, cold, and unsettling. Afra studied strange diagrams and magical scripts, satisfied with how easily the fools of the town accepted her words. Holding a vial of red liquid, she was pleased that the villagers were now even more devoted to her cause. She wasn't talking to herself. Someone had been imprisoned in her quarters for a week. Linton. He was bound to the wall with a metal mask silencing him. His left eye had been gouged out, and he was tortured in every inhuman way imaginable. His bloodshot eye glared at the witch who had put him through hell. Afra looked back at him with complete indifference. The only reason he was still alive, she claimed, was because the temple still hadn't found a way to eliminate goblins completely from the continent. Their vitality was annoyingly high. Since she had time to spare, she decided to test how her poisons worked on goblins. Hearing her angelic voice speak such vile words made Linton sick. He screamed at her, accusing her of betraying him just like she deceived the entire bright town. Even Kalia, the innocent survivor, was murdered by their hands. This was their so-called holy order. This was their so-called human justice. His defiance earned him another punishment. A wooden rod was shoved into his mouth until blood poured out. Afra found it insulting that a lustful, worthless creature like Linton dared question human justice. In her mind, Linton had bewitched Kalia. A girl choosing a goblin over humans was betrayal, and her death had been her final act of loyalty. Afra was convinced that goblins were pests, unworthy of mercy or existence. Allowing one to speak to her had been an enormous favor already. She believed Linton should be grateful to sacrifice his disgusting little body for human experiments. Her hand glowed gold, and a magical circle appeared behind him. Flames ignited, burning him with unbearable pain. The fire drowned out everything, consuming his anger and leaving only hopelessness. Linton wondered if this was really the end. Was he truly so foolish? Even after reincarnating as a low-level goblin, he held on to human compassion, believing the Holy Order was righteous. His weakness and naivety were his greatest mistakes that led him straight into the Holy Maiden's torture chamber. After being dragged back to Bright Town, Loder and Afra had tortured him endlessly. No matter how much he pleaded, they never believed a single word. Eventually, Linton could no longer survive their sadistic cruelty. His second death was agonizing, the worst possible way to die. But before his soul faded, one thought burned brighter than anything. If he ever got another chance, he would never trust humans again. He would tear them apart the way they tore him apart. And that chance arrived. The Goblin life simulation system activates. Linton opened his bloodshot eyes, confused. He was alive. But how? The system appeared, explaining that the Goblin life simulation system activates only at the moment of death. His evaluation was simple. He died because of his own foolishness. He forgot he was a goblin in a world that would never trust one. The pain of his week-long torture had imprinted itself onto his very soul. But the system offered him a new beginning, a chance to restart life. If he chose no, his soul would dissipate forever. If he chose yes, he would keep his memories and his system, and be sent back exactly 1 week before his death back to the Goblin Cave. It finally made sense. With a twisted smile, Linton realized the universe was giving him a second chance at revenge. A chance to repay every twisted cruelty Loader and Afra had inflicted on him. Without hesitation, he chose yes. His goblin life too. Zero had begun. This time, he wouldn't be the good guy. The surrounding void dissolved into digital patterns as his body was transferred back into the Goblin Cave. The system granted him a small enhancement enough to give him a fighting chance. His body felt lighter, slightly stronger. Not much, but more than nothing. And now, with vengeance burning in his heart, Linton prepared for his second life. Danger wasn't over yet. The Holy Order was already closing in on Linton's location. If he died again, the system would not revive him. He knew that better than anyone. Now he had to think carefully, how would he deal with the Holy Order once they arrived? He could not afford to lower his guard even for a moment. His first question to the system was simple. What exactly can you do? The system introduced itself as the Goblin Life Simulation System, an ability that allowed him to simulate future events. Every decision he made would create a different outcome. Each simulation lasted 24 hours, after which he would receive points he could exchange for items. Being able to preview the future through simulations was no small thing. Linton immediately realized this feature could save his life. He opened the prompt and started his first life simulation. His current objective was clear escape the Goblin Cave, because Loader now knew about this lair. The system gave him 3 choices. Option 1, warn the goblins and fight Loader, Afra, and their knights together. Reward, 10 points. Option 2, abandon the goblins and escape before everyone is slaughtered. Reward, 5 points. Option 3, hide inside the cave and pray the Holy Order doesn't find him. Reward, 0 points. Linton considered everything carefully. Even with all the goblins combined, Loader's monstrous strength would wipe them out. Fighting was hopeless. Running was the only realistic way to survive. But with the system, he could simulate the highest reward option first. The simulation ended exactly as expected with his death. Even with leadership, the goblins were annihilated like insects. The system reminded him to make decisions that matched his strength. It was clear now, goblins couldn't be trusted for survival. Still, he earned 10 points. Excited, he opened the exchange shop. It projected countless weapons, but most required hundreds or thousands of points. He only had 10. But fortunately, one item matched his total perfectly. Everlight Swift Blade, a lightweight, razor-sharp dagger crafted by elves. He bought it instantly. The blade gave him plus 15 strength and plus 10 speed, completely different from crude goblin weapons. With the right strike, a one-hit kill was possible. After preparing himself, Linton asked the system something that had been bothering him. Why couldn't he find Kalia anywhere in the cave? The system explained that because Linton was reborn, some timeline details had shifted. In this version, Kalia was never captured. She was living peacefully in Bright Town. For the first time in a long while, Linton felt relief. In a twisted way, he had kept his promise. She was safe. He had nothing left to worry about. Now he could focus all his attention on the Holy Order. But first, he had to escape. He located a narrow passage leading out of the cave. Because the entrance was small, the guard station there would likely be weaker. Linton hid near the cavern opening and observed 2 guards talking. They mocked goblins and bragged about how easy the job would be. They were also under strict orders. No girl was allowed to escape. Any survivor had to be killed. Hearing this, Linton felt a wave of anger. Not only goblins, even their own people weren't safe from them. He now had no choice left. He had to kill the guards. He created a plan. Pinching his nose to alter his voice, he cried out like a terrified Bright Town girl begging for help, pretending to flee from goblins. The guards got excited, believing they'd found a survivor to eliminate. They slowly approached the cave mouth, promising false safety while preparing to kill. Linton stepped out, his eyes cold as a killer. His new blade tasted its first human blood. The first guard didn't even have time to scream. The second guard stared at his fallen companion, confused and shocked. He stepped forward without understanding what had gone wrong. In his mind, they were hunters and goblins were prey. But to Linton, things had changed the moment humans betrayed him. Now his only goal was to grow stronger and take revenge. Linton struck before the man could react. The guard stumbled, unable to regain balance. The next moment, the blade tore across his body, leaving a deep wound. He couldn't comprehend how a goblin had defeated him so easily. His thoughts were cut short by pain that overwhelmed him, forcing him to his knees. Terrified, he looked up at the goblin he planned to kill minutes earlier. Now everything had reversed. He begged for his life. He showed Linton a medallion with his wife and daughter engraved on it. He claimed they were waiting for him to return. Linton found the irony sickening, a man ready to kill others without hesitation now pleading for mercy. The guard insisted he was only following orders and offered gold coins and even a human girl if Linton let him go. But none of this mattered. Linton had lost all illusions about humans. The guard tried to trick him with a hidden knife, but Linton had already seen it. The guard never realized that to Linton, he was nothing but a worthless creature. A moment later, he was headless on the ground. The shattered medallion lay beside the bodies. It was over. This fight only strengthened Linton's resolve never trust humans again. Suddenly, bright lights flashed from the forest. Afra and Loder were nearby. Linton knew he wasn't strong enough to face them yet. He needed time to grow. He tore a shirt from a corpse and slipped away into the woods. He swore that one day he would face Loder and Afra again and make them pay for every second of pain they inflicted. Afra and Loder soon reached the corpses. Loder couldn't understand what had happened. 2 trained guards should have been able to handle dozens of goblins. This was different. Any creature capable of killing them had to be a mutated goblin, the kind the Holy Order feared most. Afra, on the other hand, grew excited. Her twisted tendencies resurfaced. She remembered the fun she once had experimenting on an intelligent goblin and craved another one. She was eager to capture this new toy. Night fell as Linton traveled far from their reach. After a long journey, he stopped to rest, gathering his strength. His only mission now was revenge. Goblins grew stronger through mating and devouring, passing traits into their offspring. If he improved himself and created stronger generations, he could make humans live in constant fear and force every woman to kneel before him. His thoughts were suddenly interrupted by rustling behind him. Someone was in the bushes. Linton immediately raised his guard. The Holy Order could still be chasing him. He saw a silhouette hidden behind the leaves. Without hesitation, he attacked. Striking first is always the best strategy. But Linton had made a mistake. The creature he attacked wasn't a human or a knight. It was a goblin, and from its trembling posture, it had no intention of harming him. This unexpected turn made Linton pause, but his past betrayals had hardened him. He couldn't trust anyone so easily. Yet the next moment shattered all his composure. In front of him was a beautiful female goblin, lying on the ground, staring at him with wide, frightened eyes. Linton froze. He had always heard that goblins were only male, but the creature in front of him was clearly a girl, innocent, delicate, and scared out of her mind. Gathering herself, the goblin girl begged him not to hurt her. She explained that she had only come to fetch water. What truly shocked Linton was how clearly she spoke clean sentences, proper structure, almost human-like. His confusion vanished when he checked her status window. She was a level 3 goblin, and her profession was listed as God's messenger, explaining her unusual nature. Her skills included Devour and Ancient Growth, but what caught Linton's attention most was a line below. If a male goblin partners with a female goblin, the male can evolve into a legendary goblin god. That single piece of information made his mind race. Becoming a goblin god meant unimaginable power, exactly what he needed. Linton didn't want to miss such an opportunity. But the girl misunderstood his intense stare as a threat and began begging again. She said if she didn't return to the village with water, the tribe leader would kill her. Realizing his mistake, Linton calmed himself and reassured her gently. He touched her shoulder lightly, promising he wouldn't harm her. Making her cry would only attract unwanted attention. Fortunately, she relaxed and stopped trembling. Slowly, she approached him and, with childlike excitement, asked if he could really speak. Linton nodded. Goblins normally couldn't hold proper conversations, so she had always struggled to communicate with her tribe. She admitted that the other goblins only hit her and yelled at her. Being with someone who could talk felt new and comforting to her. She happily invited him to return to her tribe. Linton, thinking quickly, asked about the village. He still needed to escape the Holy Order's pursuit. Hiding inside a goblin village and blending in seemed like the perfect short-term plan. His sudden shift in tone confused the goblin girl, but after looking into his eyes, she believed him and agreed to take him along. A sly smile appeared on Linton's face. He had wondered how he would ever find subordinates. Now the opportunity had walked straight into his arms. Arrival at the goblin village. As they arrived, armed goblins poured out from their tents and surrounded Linton. They stared at his human-like clothing, confused and suspicious. They had never seen such a strange goblin before. Linton silently assessed their numbers. The village was large, perfect for building influence. He requested permission to join the tribe and meet the boss. The goblins hated this. An outsider walking into their home and making demands enraged them. They decided to grab him, beat him, and drag him to their chief. The goblin girl immediately stepped in, pleading for them to stop and begging them to let him meet the chief first. Her intervention paused the fight but ruined her own plans. The noise had already drawn attention. The chief of the village emerged. Every goblin fell silent. Linton tensed. This goblin chief was a level 25 monster, armed with well-made weapons and a powerful set of skills. Linton hadn't expected such a strong leader. Unfortunately, to take control of the tribe, Linton would eventually have to defeat him. The chief demanded to know who Linton was. The goblin girl explained he had nowhere else to go. The chief reluctantly accepted her explanation, but his expression made it clear he wasn't convinced. Violence was only seconds away. Linton quickly pulled out his dagger and tried to think. He couldn't win a direct battle. Not yet. An idea flashed in his mind, a way to buy time. He offered his skills to the tribe, claiming he could forge new weapons and increase their strength. This immediately caught the chief's attention. His bloodlust faded slightly. He ordered his goblins to stand down and walked toward Linton, inspecting him carefully. Seeing no signs of deception, he asked what kind of weapons Linton could create. Thanks to his memories from his former world, countless hours watching blacksmithing programs, Linton confidently claimed he could make simple tools and upgraded weapons if given iron ore in time. The chief could speak the human language, proving high-level monsters were far smarter than expected. Linton explained that with iron tools, the tribe wouldn't have to fear humans anymore. The idea was too tempting for the chief to reject. He agreed to give Linton 3 days to find ore and prove himself. If he failed, he would be killed and the goblin girl would die as well. As the chief left, the tribe followed. It was obvious he was a ruthless leader who wouldn't hesitate to kill his own people. Linton now had to create iron tools not to please the chief, but to buy time, until he became strong enough to kill him. Searching for iron ore that night, a scouting party was sent into the forest. The goblin girl was part of it. The group marched endlessly, exhausted. Whenever she slowed down, the other goblins beat her like a punching bag. They saw her as inferior simply because she was female. Then a stone struck one goblin's head. Linton had thrown it. He reminded them they were here to find ore, not pick fights. He described what the ore looked like and warned them that failure would bring severe consequences from the chief. When he revealed his iron knife, the goblins panicked and rushed to search with newfound motivation. Linton knew this was a temporary solution. Once his usefulness ended, he would be killed. He needed a long-term plan. That's when he remembered the system's hint. If he mated with the goblin girl, he could evolve into a legendary goblin god. A direct path to power. He approached the crying goblin girl gently and asked her to stop. Kneeling down so she could hear him clearly, he proposed that they stay together. He promised that as long as she stayed with him, no one would hurt her. She would have food, shelter, and peace. He swore on his word that he would protect her. But first, they had to get stronger. Together. The moment she heard the word strength, the goblin girl's frightened eyes lit up. Hope flickered in the goblin girl's eyes. Seeing her reaction, Linton didn't waste time. He asked her directly if she wanted power. Would she be willing to bear his children in exchange? Her hesitant response was expected. She had never participated in such a ritual before, but after witnessing Linton's kindness and gentle nature, her curiosity sparked. She wanted to explore the possibility. Before she could give a proper answer, Linton leaned in and kissed her deeply, an electrifying connection passing between them. What followed pushed Linton's abilities to the limit. The system forced strict restrictions. He only had 9 attacks, 100 GP, and 10 defense points to work with. By the end of it, Linton was drenched in sweat. But the result was worth it. He reached level 7 and gained the title Defiler, increasing his combat power to 65. His physical form also improved drastically, giving him a real chance at defeating the Goblin Priest Chief. He picked up his human clothes and gently draped them over the goblin girl. From now on, he would protect her. She was relieved for the first time in her life. A fellow goblin had shown her kindness. Their quiet moment was interrupted by frantic screams. A foolish goblin had accidentally provoked a deadly demon wolf while gathering ore. Linton immediately noticed the iron ore in the goblin's hand, the very material they needed. The girl watched anxiously as the reckless goblin tried to escape the savage beast. Fortunately, Linton was now strong and fast enough to handle real danger. His blade pierced the wolf's throat in a single, decisive strike. The fleeing goblin froze in shock. Linton walked over to the terrified goblin, intensified his voice, and demanded the ore. Trembling, the creature handed it over. Examining the ore, Linton confirmed its excellent quality. If they could find more, crafting powerful weapons would be easy. Forging iron weapons the next morning, smoke rose from the goblin camp. Linton had just forged his first iron spearhead using the ore collected during the night. He proudly demonstrated the weapon's quality by effortlessly piercing the wolf hide, something stone and bone weapons could never achieve. Even the goblin boss was stunned. Linton removed the spear from the wolf's skull and explained confidently that he crafted it himself. The spear's quality immediately lit a fire of desire in the chief's eyes. Seizing the momentum, Linton held the spear high so every goblin could see. Their eyes widened with hunger and excitement. When he asked if they wanted weapons like this, the answer was obvious. They begged him to craft more. However, the goblin priest did not appreciate Linton gaining the tribe's respect. His face darkened as he watched the crowd's reaction. The boss himself quickly formed a devious plan: use Linton for weapons, then eliminate him before he became a threat. He turned the tribe's attention to himself and publicly acknowledged Linton's skills but added no praise. Instead, he issued an ultimatum. Linton had to forge 50 spears in 2 days. Fail and he would be killed. The goblin girl would die with him. Even the regular goblins were shocked by the chief's cruelty. Still, they cooperated, helping Linton gather materials to meet the impossible deadline. As Linton walked away, he couldn't suppress a smile. Everything was unfolding exactly as he planned. The chief should have killed him earlier. Now that mistake would cost him everything. Completion of the spears 2 days later, the moment arrived. Linton dumped a full basket of iron-tipped spears onto the ground. The goblins erupted in excitement. Linton announced triumphantly that he had completed the assignment. The goblin priest gave him an insincere congratulations while the tribe distributed the new weapons. A massive bonfire was lit, marking the celebration of Linton's acceptance into the tribe. They roasted a freshly caught boar, saving the largest portion especially for him, delivered by the goblin girl herself. After so long, Linton eagerly took a bite. Instantly, he realized it was poisoned. He collapsed, choking as he tried to spit it out, but it was too late. The naive goblin girl had unknowingly served him the tainted meat. Horrified, she struggled to understand what was happening. Then the orchestrator stepped forward, the goblin priest. He mocked Linton's foolishness, laughing at how he thought he could outsmart everyone and take control of the tribe. The boss warned that all of Linton's efforts would end in death, and everything he cherished, including the girl, would be destroyed first. To prove his point, the priest slashed her with his claws. But then blood sprayed in every direction, and the girl's eyes widened in shock. The blood was not hers. It was the goblin chief's. His severed hand hit the ground with a thud. He never got the chance to carry out his threats. Linton stood up. He had recovered, or rather, he had pretended to be poisoned. He used the act to lower the chief's guard. Thanks to the system, he already knew their plan. Everything had been orchestrated perfectly. The goblin chief clutched his mangled arm, unable to understand how everything had gone so wrong. Linton simply laughed at him. The real fool had been the chief all along. The desperate monster attempted a last-ditch spell, transforming his bone staff into a weapon and lunging forward. But the attack was sloppy. Linton dodged easily. Off balance, the chief left himself completely exposed. Linton seized the opening and unleashed a powerful slash across his neck. The chief's head rolled across the ground. The tribe stared in terror, fearing they would be next. But Linton had no intention of slaughtering them. He walked to the center of the village and declared loudly that he was now the new leader. He promised them glory, wealth, and raids against humans and elves. From now on, there would be no shortage of meat and no shortage of women, and no one would underestimate goblins again. The tribe erupted in celebration, dancing and cheering as they hailed Linton as the greatest leader they had ever seen. To solidify his rule, Linton pointed to the corpse of the old chief and offered it to them. At first they hesitated, but their greed quickly overcame them. They tore into the raw meat, devouring their former leader without a second thought. That was the nature of goblins. Those with power were revered. Those without it were expendable. And now, these ruthless creatures would follow Linton in his quest for vengeance. Now that the goblin tribe was under his control, Linton created a plan. He would capture more female elves and produce a stronger, more advanced generation of goblins. But he had no idea that someone was watching. Hidden behind the bushes, an elven scout observed everything. What she saw was deeply alarming. She immediately decided to carry this information back to the elven village. Under the moonlight, moving through trees and strange wooden homes, the scout finally reached a large structure. She stopped in front of it. This was the house of the elven clan princess, Kasana. A guard was relieved to see her return, but Kasana ignored him and rushed inside. The guard anxiously tried to stop her, worried she might see something she wasn't supposed to. Inside, Kasana announced that she had urgent news to share with her mother. But as soon as she opened the door, she froze. The scene was shocking. Elves, known for being noble and brave warriors, were acting very differently here. A flirtatious elven woman in revealing clothing sat surrounded by 3 male elves. Embarrassed, Kasana turned away and apologized, saying she would come back later. But the queen's stern voice stopped her. The queen demanded she speak. Kasana composed herself and explained there was unusual activity in the goblin tribe of the eastern forest. The queen looked uninterested to her. Goblins were low-value creatures, weak and filthy. Kasana quickly added that she found the skeleton of a giant bear in the demon forest, completely chewed apart. There were signs of struggle and multiple goblin footprints. The bear was one of the strongest creatures in that forest. Goblins shouldn't have been able to kill it. She continued, saying she even witnessed the goblin tribe's former leader being killed by a young goblin. She suspected the bear's death was connected to that same goblin. The queen raised an eyebrow, mildly surprised, but didn't seem worried. Her attention shifted to the increasing number of goblins. She dismissed her servants and ordered Kasana to lead a group to eliminate the goblins, but commanded that some be kept alive. This wasn't an act of mercy. The queen needed their hearts to make a special tonic for the male elves. Kasana, who fully understood the tonic's effects, felt embarrassed by her mother's casual cruelty. As a reward for her diligence, the queen offered her a male elf for the night and asked whether she desired anything specific. Kasana's face burned with embarrassment. Meanwhile, at the goblin camp, goblin warriors sat around, discussing their next move. On the ground lay a detailed map of the elf village, prepared after observing every treehouse and patrol route. The village had 30 homes, all built high above ground. Linton praised his subordinate for the research and promised him 2 elven girls as a reward once they raided the tribe. The goblins grew excited at the mention of elf women. He ordered everyone to start preparing iron weapons. But unlike his cheering tribe, Linton wasn't excited. Strength ruled this world, and if he didn't increase the tribe's power soon, their destruction was guaranteed. He analyzed the situation. There were about 30 elven houses, likely 60 elves in total. Adding 10 guards meant at least 70 members. Since the old goblin chief died, Linton had trained his goblins in weapon crafting and monster hunting. Their abilities had improved significantly. They hunted through the forest like a storm, killing monsters and devouring them. This allowed the goblins to evolve and gain new skills like tusk smash spears and armor coat strength, reaching combined power levels of 250. The average goblin strength was now 200. But even then, the elves' collective power was still far higher. This made Linton uneasy. A dangerous battle awaited. He activated the simulation system for a strategy. In the simulation, he led a massive goblin army to attack the elves with complete confidence, but the elves ambushed them. The goblins walked into a trap. Linton was captured by the elf leader, taken to the demon forest, and hung as a warning. End of simulation. He realized something was wrong. The plan wasn't failing because of him. It was failing because someone else was controlling the outcome. 0 score. No reward. The message, "under someone else's control," echoed in his mind. At first he didn't understand, but soon the truth hit him. Elves were watching the goblin tribe. He focused, using the goblin's sharp hearing and smell. Within moments, he sensed unfamiliar patterns. In the distance, shapes moved quickly. The elves were returning to their tribe with Kasana leading them. She was shocked to learn that goblins planned to attack her people. Earlier, she had come to destroy the goblins, but upon reaching the camp, she saw they had changed drastically. Especially after discovering Linton's strategy, she needed to warn her mother. But it was too late. She had been spotted. Arrows rained down. Kasana collapsed to the ground, wounded and terrified. Her fellow elves were dead around her, their bodies scattered across the field. Linton and his goblins approached slowly, malicious grins on their faces. They were thrilled to find a living elf. Kasana tried to run, but her body refused to move. Her wound felt strange, as though the arrow had been dipped in poison. Capturing her had been easier than Linton expected. He said she arrived at the perfect time, then ordered his goblins to capture every elf. The next morning, the goblins dumped a bucket of cold water on Kasana to wake her. As soon as she regained consciousness, Linton slipped behind her and covered her mouth. His subordinates proudly informed him that they had saved the female elf specifically for him. Meanwhile, Linton thought about something else. Goblin bodily fluids had powerful effects on female creatures, including paralysis and forced excitement. This meant tomorrow's battle against the elves would be even easier. He used the goblin fluid on her, but Kasana refused to break. She screamed, calling him a filthy creature. She couldn't comprehend how goblins dared kidnap a princess and plan an attack on the elf tribe. Linton tightened his grip on her mouth, but she continued. She reminded him that the only reason goblins existed at all was because her clan mother chose to spare them. Without her mercy, the elves would have wiped them out long ago. She warned that if even a single hair on her head was harmed, her mother would destroy the entire goblin race. Linton smiled. He threw her to the ground. He explained that the spirit within elves was different from the spirit inside goblins. Even his foolish minions wouldn't dare lie about such things, yet the princess was boldly doing just that. He told her the elves indeed had the power to exterminate every goblin in the forest. So why hadn't they? He didn't share the reason aloud. Instead, he decided to investigate. That night, he ordered 2 goblin minions to split up and acquire the remaining elf abilities from 2 other captured elves. Kasana was horrified. She couldn't move, couldn't resist, her strength completely gone. Linton stared at her and considered his next move. When he stepped closer, she screamed again, promising he would never escape justice. Her desperation echoed through the air. Then a system notification appeared. Linton had reached the level cap of 30. As a reward, his accumulated experience was converted into 50 GP, and he gained plus 10 strength and plus 10 defense. He even unlocked elf skills stealth and night vision. Elsewhere, inside the elven treehouse, the scene shifted to the elven tribe's treetop homes. Several male elves groaned in exhaustion, telling the clan mother they couldn't continue. The queen only smiled, saying they had done enough, their potions were already used up, and they couldn't hold back any longer. She seemed disappointed. She told one of the elves that if she had known things would turn out this way, she would have captured more goblins last time, but found no clues. The silence around her movements felt suspicious. The scene shifted to a circular plaza where people crowded around a new ranking poster. Lin noticed that the Blade Warriors had just reached Platinum rank, putting Loader at the top of the adventurer list again. Concerned that missing information might ruin his revenge plans, he slipped away to gather more clues. Soon, he arrived at a lively building filled with loud laughter. Realizing this might be the opportunity he'd been waiting for, Lin entered the Adventurer's Inn. Inside, Loader was drinking heavily while a storyteller bragged about how Loader saved him from a 4-armed demon. The mood changed when a rival group arrived and began mocking the Blade Warriors. Their drunken argument escalated until the bartender stepped in, using the chaos to suggest a real challenge, slaying the dangerous dragon terrorizing Long Island. The mention of the dragon startled Lin. The bartender warned that the creature could destroy the city before the royal troops arrived. Despite the tension, Loader arrogantly claimed it was just a small challenge and boasted that the Sword Saint was already on her way to assist. While the adventurers celebrated her arrival in advance, Lin quietly paid the bartender and left, already thinking about how this dragon threat fit into his larger plan. Loader invited him for drinks, but Lin refused with a polite smile before slipping out. Meanwhile, in Basley's town, Loader reported to the Sword Saint Elysia, confirming that he had prepared 10 dragon hunting crossbows as she ordered. Moments later, chaos erupted as a massive crimson dragon descended on the city. Elysia took command, and the walls shook as soldiers fired the crossbows she had designed. Just as they gained the upper hand, thunderclouds gathered. A terrifying pressure swept the sky. The mother of thunder dragons had arrived. Her power was overwhelming, and even Elysia struggled against the force of her attacks. Despite everything, she shielded the city with her magic barrier and continued fighting alone. Far away, Lin and a group of goblins watched the battle from a distance. After analyzing the stats of both Elysia and the Dragon Mother, he realized that although Elysia was stronger, the dragon's massive health made the battle drag on. This delay created the perfect opening Lin had been waiting for. While the city focused on dragons, Lin's goblin teams infiltrated from multiple directions. Smaller dragons burned the houses, people screamed for help, and Loader struggled to hold the defenses. That's when villagers noticed goblins attacking inside the walls, something no one expected. As Loader rushed to rescue a woman fleeing from a goblin pack, an ambush was triggered beneath the sewer lid. Goblins swarmed him, his leg was torn off, and a Freya was captured. Soldiers tried to help but were overwhelmed. Before they could regroup, Lin appeared behind them and eliminated the remaining defenders in an instant. Loder, shocked and furious, finally saw Lin's face when he pulled back his hood. Goblins dragged Loder and Afraya toward the forest while the city burned behind them. Back at the battlefield, Elysia was trying to finish the Dragon Mother when a massive explosion from the city distracted her. Goblins arrived at the perfect moment, giving the Dragon Mother time to escape after promising she would return stronger. Hours later, Elysia returned to the devastated streets, slaughtered the remaining goblins, and demanded to know Loder's location. When she learned he'd been taken, rage consumed her. Survivors begged her not to leave, fearing more goblin attacks. She reluctantly agreed to stay and request reinforcements from the royal family. Meanwhile, deep inside the goblin tribe, villagers cheered as Lin returned with 2 human prisoners, Loder and Afraya. Both were thrown before the tribe, surrounded by goblins and elves. Loder whispered to Afraya that this tribe was far more organized than they expected. Afraya tried purifying the poison inside her, but Lin approached with a mocking smile. He watched her struggle, then dug his claw into her leg, making her scream. Loder tried to stop him, but was held down and beaten by goblins. Lin finally stepped back, wiping his hands clean. Loder warned him about the Sword Saint, but Lin only smiled. She was already on his target list, just not yet. He ordered his goblins to begin hunting monsters in the forest while he prepared for his next stage of evolution. Putting his foot on Loder's chest, Lin calmly said he had some questions and Loder better answer honestly if he wanted to survive. As Lin prepared to leave, Yu shouted after him, promising she would protect the tribe until he returned. Soldiers were patrolling everywhere, and Lin quietly observed the Titan's security. He suspected the Sword Saint had arrived, since he'd been searching for her for a long time, but found no clues. The silence around her movements felt suspicious. The scene shifted to a circular plaza where people crowded around a new ranking poster. Lin noticed that the Blade Warriors had just reached Platinum rank, putting Loder at the top of the adventurer list again. Concerned that missing information might ruin his revenge plans, he slipped away to gather more clues. Soon, he arrived at a lively building filled with loud laughter. Realizing this might be the opportunity he'd been waiting for, Lin entered the Adventurer's Inn. Inside, Loder was drinking heavily while a storyteller bragged about how Loder saved him from a 4-armed demon. The mood changed when a rival group arrived and began mocking the Blade Warriors. Their drunken argument escalated until the bartender stepped in, using the chaos to suggest a real challenge, slaying the dangerous dragon terrorizing Long Island. The mention of the dragon startled Lin. The bartender warned that the creature could destroy the city before the royal troops arrived. Despite the tension, Loder arrogantly claimed it was just a small challenge and boasted that the Sword Saint was already on her way to assist. While the adventurers celebrated her arrival in advance, Lin quietly paid the bartender and left, already thinking about how this dragon threat fit into his larger plan. Loder invited him for drinks, but Lin refused with a polite smile before slipping out. Meanwhile, in Basley's town, Loder reported to the Sword Saint Elysia confirming that he had prepared 10 dragon hunting crossbows as she ordered. Moments later, chaos erupted as a massive crimson dragon descended on the city. Elysia took command, and the walls shook as soldiers fired the crossbows she had designed. Just as they gained the upper hand, thunderclouds gathered. A terrifying pressure swept the sky. The mother of thunder dragons had arrived. Her power was overwhelming, and even Elysia struggled against the force of her attacks. Despite everything, she shielded the city with her magic barrier and continued fighting alone. Far away, Lin and a group of goblins watched the battle from a distance. After analyzing the stats of both Elysia and the Dragon Mother, he realized that although Elysia was stronger, the dragon's massive health made the battle drag on. This delay created the perfect opening Lin had been waiting for. While the city focused on dragons, Lin's goblin teams infiltrated from multiple directions. Smaller dragons burned the houses, people screamed for help, and Loder struggled to hold the defenses. That's when villagers noticed goblins attacking inside the walls, something no one expected. As Loder rushed to rescue a woman fleeing from a goblin pack, an ambush was triggered beneath the sewer lid. Goblins swarmed him, his leg was torn off, and a Freya was captured. Soldiers tried to help but were overwhelmed. Before they could regroup, Lyn appeared behind them and eliminated the remaining defenders in an instant. Loder, shocked and furious, finally saw Lyn's face when he pulled back his hood. Goblins dragged Loder and a Freya toward the forest while the city burned behind them. Back at the battlefield, Elysia was trying to finish the Dragon Mother when a massive explosion from the city distracted her. Goblins arrived at the perfect moment, giving the Dragon Mother time to escape after promising she would return stronger. Hours later, Elysia returned to the devastated streets, slaughtered the remaining goblins, and demanded to know Loder's location. When she learned he'd been taken, rage consumed her. Survivors begged her not to leave, fearing more goblin attacks. She reluctantly agreed to stay and request reinforcements from the royal family. Meanwhile, deep inside the goblin tribe, villagers cheered as Lyn returned with 2 human prisoners, Loder and a Freya. Both were thrown before the tribe, surrounded by goblins and elves. Loder whispered to a Freya that this tribe was far more organized than they expected. A Freya tried purifying the poison inside her, but Lyn approached with a mocking smile. He watched her struggle, then dug his claw into her leg, making her scream. Loder tried to stop him, but was held down and beaten by goblins. Lyn finally stepped back, wiping his hands clean. Loder warned him about the Sword Saint, but Lyn only smiled. She was already on his target list, just not yet. He ordered his goblins to begin hunting monsters in the forest while he prepared for his next stage of evolution. Putting his foot on Loder's chest, Lyn calmly said he had some questions and Loder better answer honestly if he wanted to survive. Loder finally felt the real danger when Lyn stepped closer, his presence turning sharp and threatening. Lyn pulled out a dagger and coldly asked if humans enjoyed capturing and torturing secret goblins. Without warning, he sliced off Loder's ear with perfect precision. Loder grabbed his bleeding ear in pain while Freya froze in horror. Lyn demanded to know whether humans truly believed their actions were righteous, or if they were only protecting their hero reputation. He accused Loder and Freya of wiping out a village, an act humans praised as heroism. Mocking their ideals, Lyn said humans kill both monsters and innocents just to maintain their status. When Loder and Freya panicked about how a goblin knew so much, Lyn stayed calm. He said the conversation was over, he didn't need righteousness because his evil nature was real. He promised to give them a lesson they would never forget. Freya broke down, screaming for Loder's help, but Lyn grabbed her and intensified the torment while goblins held Loder down. Lyn told Loder a show was about to begin. Goblins pressed closer while Freya collapsed helplessly. Loder realized exactly how horrifying things were about to get. Freya lay on the ground, unable to move, as goblins began ripping her clothes. Next morning, a goblin guard told another that shift change time was here, and the boss wanted Freya kept alive. The second goblin smirked with satisfaction. Freya, bruised and exhausted, was tied up while Loder tried to encourage her not to give up. She forced a weak smile, saying she would endure whatever came. A goblin stepped on Loder's head, telling him to shut up. Nearby, the clan mother sat with the princess, feeding a goblin baby. She commented that Lyn Tien clearly held a deep grudge against humans, judging by the way they were treated. The princess agreed humans had it far worse than elves, who at least received fruit to eat. Goblin Yu arrived with fruits, and small goblins played around her. She mentioned hearing Lyn Tien speak harshly against humans before, so his grudge was probably real. The clan mother said Lyn Tien never forgets his enemies, which is what makes him unique, and she secretly blushed, which the princess immediately teased her about. Spikehead announced that the second generation had returned from hunting. Carrying massive beasts, they proudly showed their strength. Lin scanned one goblin, level 33, warrior class, high HP and defense. He realized second-generation goblins had already evolved past level 30 and were reaching his level. He asked why they returned early. The lead hunter reported they cleared all monsters nearby and moved to the west side, where they saw other goblin tribes being slaughtered by the Blood Fang tribe, mostly high-tier goblins. This caught Lin's interest. If he could capture their leaders, he could create even stronger third-generation goblins. Loader, tied up and half blindfolded, laughed bitterly, calling Lin a fool for dreaming. He said goblins would always lose to knights. Annoyed, Lin shifted into his evil mood and gave permission for the goblins who didn't get their fun last time to play with the captain next. Loader screamed as 3 goblins surrounded him. One even commented how soft male humans were before pouncing on him. Freya, chained nearby, stayed silent and tried to ignore Loader's cries. Hours later, goblins gathered to roast meat and celebrate their hunt. Ling Tian sat with Yu and the clan mother. Yu hesitantly asked if he planned to attack the Blood Fang tribe. Lin said it was necessary. He wanted their leader alive to strengthen their own tribe further. He declared a new tribe name, Yin Kuang tribe, taken from his own name. Goblins cheered loudly at their tribe finally having a name. Yu, still worried, asked how he planned to capture a leader who wiped out several tribes. Lin simply told her to trust him. He had a hidden trump card. His eyes moved to Freya, clearly indicating she was part of his strategy. Next day, Lin scouted the demonic forest. From a cliff, he analyzed the Blood Fang tribe. Many high-tier goblins were present, but manageable. Then their leader appeared, a hero-class goblin, level 50 with strong stats. Lin's eyes lit up. He reasoned that handling a dozen warriors wouldn't be hard, though capturing the leader would cause resistance. He also realized their paralytic poison likely wouldn't work on Blood Fang goblins. They were too large and resistant. So he remembered Freya's imprisonment spell from his past life, deciding that might be the key to capturing the Blood Fang leader. Back in the goblin camp, Spikehead reported that they followed Lin's orders exactly, but joked that Freya looked completely broken now, lying on the ground as if drugged. Lin dismissed him and walked over to her. Freya, half-conscious and muttering, begged to be killed so she could atone before her lord. Instead of finishing her, Lin knelt and began gently wiping and healing her wounds with a warm towel. She relaxed for a moment, enjoying the warmth until she realized it was Lin touching her. Terrified, she jerked away, called him a demon, and said the pain was driving her insane. Lin suddenly slapped her hard, then pulled her into his arms from behind and hugged her tightly. He calmly told her the punishment was over. In shock, tears in her eyes, Freya asked if he was serious. Lin said he always keeps his word, but only under one condition. She had to choose her faith. He told her she could either keep believing in her god, or place her trust in him and become his pet, ending her daily torture. While she trembled, he gently stroked her head to calm her. Completely broken inside, Freya said nothing at first, then suddenly started licking his hand. Lin took that as a sign of submission. He declared that from now on, he was her only master, and she would call herself his pet. Freya let out a weak wolf-like sound and called him Master. Lin then lifted her up in a princess carry and took her to a hot bath. While he washed her, she said he was treating her too kindly and she was willing to give him everything. Lin replied that this was perfect because he wanted everything, including her skills. He asked to see how the holy light cage worked. Hearing the name, Freya repeated it and asked what it was, calling him Master again. Lin pulled out a spellbook he'd taken from the elves and pointed at the holy light cage spell. As a magician, she quickly read and understood it, then began casting. A bright golden cage appeared with a crucifix-like structure inside, which impressed Lin. Later, Lin and Freya passed by the iron cage where Loader was imprisoned. Loader was shocked to see her walking and immediately begged her to kill Lin and heal him before Lin could make a move. Lin smirked and told Loder to open his eyes. Freya had willingly accepted him as her master now. Freya stayed silent while Lin spoke, then knelt down and rubbed against him like a pet. Lin told her to say it clearly. Did she submit of her own will? Freya answered that she did, calling him master. Loder felt all hope leave his body. He lowered his head but bitterly laughed, saying that because of Lin's actions, the entire goblin race would be wiped out. He swore that the Holy Church would erase them from the world. Lin, however, was pleased. He hadn't expected Freya to submit so completely, and he mentally thanked Loder for revealing such valuable information. As a reward, he ordered the goblins not to let the captain rest for the next few days. A goblin with a whip smiled and told the boss to leave it to him. Lin then turned back to Freya and said it was time to focus on their real goal, the Blood Fang tribe. Blood Fang tribe confrontation. In the Blood Fang tribe, life continued as usual. Their priest-like captain reported to the leader that everything was ready. The Blood Fang chief, excited, announced they would raid the southern tribes, capture elves, and enjoy themselves. The goblins roared in approval. Their celebration stopped when a guard rushed in, reporting that a strange goblin had entered their territory alone and demanded to see the leader. Curious, the Blood Fang chief went out and found Lin Tian standing there. Lin calmly told him that he knew the chief was a hero-class monster with human-level intelligence. That's why he came to talk. The chief noticed Lin's human-like body and speech patterns and asked if he was a mutant. Lin replied that he wasn't. He was just smarter than other goblins. His blank, expressionless tone made nearby goblins visibly angry. Then, without any build-up, Lin declared that he was the leader of the southern tribe and had come for the Blood Fang leader's head. He gave him two options: submit and accept him as master, or die here. The entire tribe tensed up, waiting for the command to rip Lin apart. The Blood Fang chief was shocked to realize this was the infamous southern leader who captured elves, the same one he had been planning to hunt. Lin continued, saying the chief had good genes and should become his slave and join his tribe. The Blood Fang leader snapped, calling Lin crazy. In one motion, he grabbed Lin's head with his massive hand and told him to shut up, confident he could kill him and take his elves and humans for himself. The tribe cheered, shouting for their leader to crush Lin's skull. Lin, still calm in the chief's grip, simply said there was no need to talk further. The leader mocked his luck, saying he planned to keep him alive. In the next instant, Lin moved. His attack sliced through the chief's arm, and a heartbeat later, the leader's severed hand fell to the ground. The tribe stared in horror as their leader screamed in pain, finally realizing he'd truly lost his arm. He instantly ordered his warriors to kill Lin. The Blood Fang priest tried to rally the fighters to take revenge, but before he could do anything, Lin raised his hand and told an invisible figure to come out. A sword suddenly pierced the priest from behind. With his last thoughts, the priest wondered how his assassin had moved so silently. A second-generation goblin from Lin's tribe stepped out, revealing that he had gained an invisibility skill from his prey. Another goblin proudly explained their extra skill silent steps, which let them move completely without sound. Lin then ordered all goblin warriors to reveal themselves and wipe out the entire Blood Fang tribe. Goblin captains repeated the command. The boss had ordered total extermination. In an instant, hundreds of goblins using silent steps appeared around the camp and began attacking, tearing through Blood Fang goblins with their weapons. The Blood Fang leader could only watch in shock as his tribe descended into chaos, realizing too late how badly he had underestimated the southern tribe's true power.